In the past on this channel, we've covered all manner of lost media to do with Disney, whether that be the TV we enjoyed as kids with popular programming blocks like Jetix and Playhouse Disney, as well as some obscure unofficial Disney media like Uncle Walt. But there likely isn't a fan of Disney that hasn't spent some time enjoying their favourite shows or movies on Disney's main offering for TV audiences everywhere, Disney Channel. Originally launched as the Disney Channel in April of 1983 in America before dropping the from the title in 1997, Disney Channel has since expanded to various territories worldwide, airing a variety of live action and animated shows and movies made specifically for the channel, as well as showcasing some of Disney's theatrical works. And while the channel is no longer available here in the UK, as well as various other parts of the world thanks to the advent of streaming and Disney+, the channel still enjoys success in North America, with approximately 70 million households in America tuning into the channel as of November 2023. Like I'm sure many of you watching have, I loved watching the Disney Channel as a kid, and have a lot of nostalgia for some of the shows that aired on there, with one of my favourite shows from the Disney Channel, that being Phineas and Ferb, recently making a comeback with a whole new season on Disney+. With that being the case, I thought there wouldn't be a better time than now to take a look back at some of the content related to the Disney Channel that has gone missing over the years. So much like we did with Disney's TV blocks before this, let's take a look at the bigger picture and dive deep into some of the lost content from the behemoth that Disney started over 40 years ago. My name is Media Sensei, and you're watching the lost and cancelled media of the Disney Channel. Absolutely psychic. One of the most popular and iconic things about the Disney Channel is its string of live-action original programming that made stars out of so many of its child stars and became a huge part of the channel's identity. A large majority of these live-action shows were teen sitcoms, with some of the most famous and successful being Hannah Montana, The Suite Life of Zack and Cody, and Lizzie McGuire. There have been loads of these made over the years, with a wide variety of stars that have come and gone from the Disney Channel, but one of the shows that's been a long-lasting mainstay on the channel, supposedly changing the way that Disney approached making their original programming, was That's So Raven. The series focuses on Raven Baxter, a teenager who can foresee glimpses of the future thanks to psychic powers she has, as she tries to avert situations to protect her friends and family from potential trouble. The show was popular enough to be nominated for 2 Emmys, and had 2 spin-off shows with Cory in the House and Raven's Home, which only ended a couple years ago. Despite how popular the character and the actress would eventually become, the original version of this show didn't actually even feature Raven as the main character. After the success of some of their previous shows, the Disney Channel developed a pilot for a series called Absolutely Psychic, where Raven appeared as the best friend to the main character and not as the protagonist of the show. However, when the network screened the pilot for test audiences, they loved Raven and the psychic angle of the show so much that it was decided that she would be the star of the show, and the show was rewritten to transpose the energy and comedy of the best friend character to the main character, with Raven taking over the role. As usual with pitch pilots of this nature, Disney has never released any material from this pilot. There are no screenshots or footage that has leaked online either, with the only details we do have coming from articles that document the development of the show and from some people involved with the show and its production, such as Annalise van der Pol, who played Raven's best friend, Chelsea Daniels, in the final series. She confirmed that the character of Chelsea did not appear in this pilot, which makes sense since her role was likely filled by whatever Raven's character was called at the time. While we don't have any footage of the pilot, we do know at least one copy of it exists, and it's in the hands of the pilot's director, Sean McNamara. This information comes to us from YouTuber Stay Up Late Productions, who contacted Sean when making his video on the topic, asking him if he was in possession of a copy of the pilot. He confirmed that he did have a copy, but when Stay Up Late Productions asked him if he could release it, Sean didn't respond, likely as he didn't want to risk any legal trouble from Disney by releasing the pilot against their wishes. As this pilot formed the basis of what the show would eventually turn into, I'm sure it's something that many fans of the show would enjoy seeing. While Disney isn't known for releasing pitch pilots for their shows publicly, with a few other shows like Recess having lost pilots of their own, it's good to know that at least one copy of it still exists, even if Sean isn't able to or doesn't want to release it for whatever reason. It also does raise the question as to whether or not other cast members or production crew managed to keep it for themselves, as they are likely the only ones who have a copy of this elusive pilot at this point, outside of the master copy, which likely rests in some vault in Disney somewhere. And as long as this remains the case, we won't get to see the pitch pilot that eventually morphed into what would become the start of one of Disney's most successful sitcoms. Going Wild with Jeff Corwin. Perhaps one of the lesser mentioned but very successful parts of Disney's media output are their nature documentaries, with multiple of their documentaries, such as 1953's The Living Desert or 1954's The Vanishing Prairie, taking home Academy Awards for just how good they were. With many successes in this department, it's unsurprising that the Disney Channel took a shot at making a nature documentary of their own, with 1997's Going Wild with Jeff Corwin. Airing between 1997 and 1999 on the Disney Channel, Going Wild with Jeff Corwin was a series that featured American biologist Jeff Corwin travelling to various parts of the world, such as South Africa, Canada, Florida, and Death Valley. In each episode, Jeff searches for the episode's feature creature, coming across various animals, caves, and ruins in the process. Jeff also supposedly had quite a few close encounters while making this show, with him apparently being attacked by a leopard in South Africa, being jumped on by an African lion, and almost being trampled by a moose in Thailand. I'm sure if the show was available to watch, this would probably make for some great entertainment. I couldn't find a whole lot of information about this series online, as it seems to be forgotten by most people, being incredibly obscure, and as of the making of this video, not a single complete episode in English has surfaced on the internet, with the only footage we have of the series coming from promos or from one episode's Latin American dub that has surfaced in very low quality. I couldn't even seem to find a consistent episode list online, as the Lost Media Wiki, IMDb, and Wikipedia all list different episode orders and numbers of seasons for the show. As far as availability of the series goes, according to both the Lost Media Wiki and Wikipedia, the show was released on VHS at some point and didn't get a DVD release of any kind, but I wasn't able to find any information or evidence on any sort of VHS release, and neither of the sites linked to any sort of source to back up their claims. A user named Nick on the Lost Media Wiki stated that VHSs for the show were catalogued in library databases across the world, and that there were VHS tapes listed for sale on Amazon, but again, there wasn't any tangible evidence to prove that this was the case. If anyone watching this video happens to know anything else about the series, or watched it back when it was airing in the late 90s, do feel free to let me know in the comments below, as outside of some of the promo material we have and some of the screenshots, finding content from this series online seems to be incredibly difficult. Like a lot of shows on this list, unless Disney releases it on Disney Plus at some point, home recordings would be our best bet of finding the series, unless the supposed VHS releases of the show do surface at some point and reveal more to us about this super obscure nature documentary series. Disney Channel Interactive Dish Games. Disney Channel Interactive was a service that was offered by Dish Network that allowed fans to play various games developed by a company called Visiware through their cable box using their TV remote. This was done by going to Channel 100, where fans would be greeted by a variety of minigames that were of course all based on shows that were airing on Disney Channel at the time, with there also being information about each show the games were based on, along with when they would be airing on the Disney Channel. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I have a weird nostalgia for games that were offered by TV networks through the satellite dish or cable box, such as Sky Games here in the UK for those of you who remember that. I specifically remember playing the trial versions of the games based on Tom and Jerry a lot when I was a kid at my grandparents' house, but I don't know that these Disney games were ever made available here in the UK. If anyone knows, feel free to let me know in the comments. Either way, much like a lot of games of this nature that were beamed to users' TVs via their cable box, the content that was once available on the Disney Channel Interactive service has since become unavailable and has not resurfaced since the service shut down, with the actual date when the service did shut down remaining unknown. For a good while, we didn't even know exactly which games were available through the service until a commenter was able to get into contact with a Visiware employee who shared a complete list of every game available on the service, with games based on some of Disney's most popular shows such as Gravity Falls, Good Luck Charlie, and Hannah Montana. As far as content from the actual games and channel goes, all we have is footage of one of the games being played on a TV, this game being Tipton Token Face Off, a Connect 4 clone based on the popular series The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. Outside of this footage, we have one screenshot of the main menu of the channel from an old webpage for the Dish Network, but it is in incredibly low quality and isn't very legible outside of a couple of images that can be seen. One of the games listed as part of this service on the Lost Media wiki, titled Kim Possible's Super Smash Out, is also playable in a web browser through the website disneygames.com, with the game initially being hosted on the original Disney Channel website, I assume. However, it is unknown if there are any differences between the browser version and the one that was present on the Disney Channel interactive service. As of 2025, outside of the Kim Possible game, every single game that was available on the service is completely lost, with not even the trial versions of a single one making their way onto the internet. There isn't even any footage of any of the games, aside from the aforementioned Tipton Token Face Off and Kim Possible's Super Smash Out, available anywhere on the web, and even if the files were to be found, I'm unsure how exactly we'd go about playing them, since without some sort of emulator, the files would be almost useless. Since the Kim Possible game is playable through web browsers, I'm wondering if the rest of these games are just Flash games that were ported to this service for people to play through their TVs, or if some of the games were actually unique and exclusive to this service. Since these types of TV games aren't very common anymore, I'd be shocked if these games ever did resurface in any sort of playable state, unless we got web versions of them, like we have for the Kim Possible game. Until more footage or files from these games are uncovered, all we have are recollections from people online who played some of these, describing what they were like, or the very little footage available to us from this interesting service run by Disney and the Dish Network back in the early 2000s. Phineas and Ferb, Delivery of Destiny, Simon Pegg Audio. As stated at the start of this video, one of, if not my favourite show to ever air on the Disney Channel, is Phineas and Ferb. The show follows the adventures of brothers Phineas and Ferb, along with their friends, as they go on various adventures over the 104 days of their summer vacation, with their sister Candace constantly trying to foil their plans. The show has become one of the most iconic Disney cartoons ever made, particularly for the 2000s and 2010s, and I'm really enjoying seeing it back on screens again with the recently released new episodes on Disney+. It looks like they haven't lost their touch too, as 10 years on, the show still gets laughs out of me to this day. Interestingly, there have been a couple of examples of Phineas and Ferb lost media in the past, such as the infamous Spot the Diff episodes, which featured slightly altered versions of episodes from the show that aired for a very limited time. Those were eventually found and archived online though, unlike the entry on our list today, which remains lost to this day. This piece of lost media is to do with the 42nd episode of the show's third season, titled Delivery of Destiny, that follows Paul the delivery guy as he discovers his job as a higher calling to save Danville, with him making stops at Phineas and Ferb's house, Doofenshmirtz Evil Incorporated, and various other locations from the show. In the American version of this episode, Paul was voiced by actor Christian Slater, but in the UK release of the episode, Slater's audio was redubbed with that of famed British actor Simon Pegg. Pegg became a fan of the show after watching it with his daughter, and tweeted about it, which got the attention of Disney, causing them to offer him the role as Paul in the British version of this episode, which Pegg accepted and recorded the whole episode as the character. The episode aired in the UK on March 7th, 2013, and was most likely rerun after this date here in the UK, but the version with Pegg's audio hasn't appeared on any home release of the show, and hasn't been uploaded on the internet since. Even the version of the episode that's on digital platforms like Disney Plus or Prime Video here in the UK features the American audio with Christian Slater voicing Paul, and the only clips we have of Simon Pegg's performance in the episode come from an interview he did with Associated Press to promote the show, and a promo clip that was uploaded to the Disney Channel UK YouTube channel. One interesting thing to note is that this wasn't the only time that Pegg appeared on the show, as he would later return alongside his friend and fellow actor Nick Frost to reprise their roles as the characters Shaun and Ed from Edgar Wright's 2004 horror comedy classic Shaun of the Dead. As this scene and performance was present in every version of the episode though, it survived the trip overseas, and the versions of this episode available on home media and on Disney Plus both have Pegg's performance intact. Unfortunately though, this isn't the case for Delivery of Destiny, and as all Disney TV channels actually shut down here in the UK in September of 2020 due to the launch of Disney Plus, the version of this episode with Simon Pegg won't be found on TV here anytime soon. Pegg is one of my favourite actors. I mean, Hot Fuzz is quite literally my favourite comedy of all time. It's really funny if you guys haven't seen it. And while I'm happy we still do have a performance from him in the show, thanks to the later episode where he reprised his role from Shaun of the Dead, it does kind of suck that this alternate version of Delivery of Destiny isn't available anywhere that features him as a part of it. In the unlikely event that this dub of the episode does someday see an official release from Disney, or if a fan of the show from the UK uploads a home recording they have, we'll be lucky to see more of what Pegg did with his performance, but until then, we'll have to be content with the clips that we have of Simon Pegg's first appearance on Phineas and Ferb. Talespin, Phil Harris's performance as Baloo. One of my favourite Disney movies of all time is the 1967 classic The Jungle Book, which was actually the last animated film that Walt Disney was ever personally involved in before his passing in 1966. Despite it being one of my favourite Disney films though, I somehow never got around to seeing the spin-off series featuring one of my favourite characters from that original film, Baloo the Bear. Titled Talespin, this show followed Baloo, who is now a pilot that delivers packages, as he and other characters from the Jungle Book, like Shere Khan and King Louie, go on adventures in the fictional city of Cape Suzette. The show aired on the Disney Channel as part of the Disney Afternoon block in the 90s, and is one of the most recognisable Disney Channel shows from that time in the channel's history. For those who grew up watching the original Jungle Book film like I did, they likely remember Baloo being voiced by actor Phil Harris, who provided voices in several animated Disney films such as The Aristocats and Robin Hood. However, for Talespin, the role of Baloo was recast with voice actor Ed Gilbert, who I'm sure everyone who watched the show back in the day remembers fondly. But there actually was a time where it was planned for Ed Harris to reprise his role as the character in Talespin, with some audio actually being recorded for the show using his performance. For some time it was debated exactly how much of the show was recorded with Phil Harris voicing Baloo, with some saying that around 5 episodes or so were recorded, and others stating that it was less than 1 episode, but this was sort of cleared up later by one of the show's creators, Jim Magan, on a thread on Animation Source where he said that he thought they recorded 2 to 3 episodes, and while Harris definitely still sounded like Baloo, he didn't have the timing that they were looking for, and they had to chauffeur him from his home in Palm Springs to the studio, which was a round trip of about 4 hours, leading to the decision to replace him with Ed Gilbert. After this, the status of what exactly happened to Harris's recordings from the show became a mystery until May the 24th of this year, when Reddit user Tweedlebum, great name by the way, posted on the site saying that he was in possession of the audio recordings. He posted a photo of the tapes to prove he had the recordings in hand, revealing that the episodes that Harris had recorded were titled I Only Have Ice for You, Time Waits for No Bear, A Touch of Glass, and A Bad Reflection on You Part 1, with Tweedlebum being in possession of the recordings for all of these episodes but A Touch of Glass. When asked if he could release the recordings, he stated that he would release them when he felt like it, and he did say he had plans to release them to coincide with an upcoming publication, but this hasn't happened as of yet. We know where they are and who has them, but we're just waiting for Tweedlebum to release them. I for one am incredibly hopeful that the publication that this user wants to release the audio alongside will materialise sometime soon, as I'm really interested in hearing another performance of Phil as Baloo. Even though I never got around to checking out Talespin, his performance in the original Jungle Book film is one of my favourites of any animated Disney character, and I can't wait for the day where the audio is released and we hear one last performance from the original voice of Baloo the Bear. Disney Channel Wand Idents. I love you if you caught my reference to this at the start of the video, by the way. Despite not being an actual show that aired on the Disney Channel, one of the most iconic aspects of the channel's branding since they first debuted in the early 2000s are the wand identification bumpers. For those of you who haven't watched the Disney Channel since they first debuted these bumpers feature an actor or character from a Disney movie or show saying their name and proclaiming that you're watching the Disney Channel before drawing the Disney Channel's logo with a wand. These weren't just limited to live action actors too, even animated characters got in on the fun, with many of these being made to tie into new movie releases, show debuts, and the like. Now there are way too many of these to name them all individually here, with almost every Disney show, movie, or character that had even the remotest thing to do with the Disney Channel getting one of these at some point or another. But despite how iconic they are, a large majority of these bumpers have never been archived or stored online in any way. The search for these bumpers is further complicated by the fact that there are several variants of some of them. There are some that were in English, some that weren't in English, some that were exclusive to other countries, some that were cut down versions where the person just draws the channel's logo without saying anything, some where the person doesn't say their name, but they do say you're watching the Disney Channel, and so many more. And it's not even like it's just the ones that aired back in the early 2000s that are lost. So many of these have come and gone over the years that some bumpers from various versions of the channel from as late as 2020 have gone missing, with some of these featuring tie-ins to enormous movies like Toy Story 4 and Avengers Endgame. With the enthusiasm in the lost media community and the advent of various ways to make home recordings of these bumpers, you'd think that it would make them becoming lost today a much rarer case, but it appears we're not that lucky, unfortunately. I guess some of these probably just aired once or twice, and if no one was recording them at the time, then they would be lost forever. This is one of those weird instances of lost media, kind of like the ooh and ah bumpers that I covered in my Playhouse Disney video, where it's not likely that these will ever be released in any form officially again. As most of them were made to tie into specific movies or shows, debuting in cinemas or on the channel at the time, it's unlikely that we'll ever see them reappear outside of home recordings. I don't want to be too pessimistic, and while I'm hopeful that more of these will eventually resurface from fans trawling through their hours of recordings of the Disney Channel from all across the world and uploading the currently unarchived bumpers online, getting a complete set of the Disney Channel wand idents from every region across the world seems to me like an almost impossible ask, and the missing bumpers will just have to live on as memories for those who saw them when they initially aired on the Disney Channel. Welcome to Pooh Corner. For this entry, we'll be going all the way back to the start of the Disney Channel back in 1983, as the show we're talking about here was one of the debut shows for the channel on April 18th, 1983, when it first began airing. Titled Welcome to Pooh Corner, the series predominantly featured live-action actors in costumes of the various Winnie the Pooh characters we've seen across the years, with costumes designed by the man who brought us Teddy Ruxpin back in the 1980s. As the show was made before the Disney Channel began airing commercials, there were no breaks, making the show last for a full 30 minutes, with each episode being split up into 3 segments. The main story for each episode lasted about 20 minutes, which was then followed by a sing-along segment featuring one of 9 songs that was written for the show by the legendary Sherman Brothers, who wrote many of Disney's most famous songs. Each episode would then end with an arts and crafts segment where one of the cast members would show viewers how to make something. Despite the show's fairly long 120 episode run on TV and its historical significance as one of the first shows to ever air on the Disney Channel, the complete show was never released on home media, and as such, many of the episodes from it remain lost to this day. As of right now, just under half of the show's episodes are missing in English, with almost the entirety of the French dub of the show being lost. There were also a few additional pieces of content from this show, such as 4 educational specials, which are thankfully all archived, and segments called A Part of Me. These segments appeared at the end of episodes that were less than 30 minutes long, where one of the characters would sing about a part of their body, with Pooh singing about ears, Owl singing about eyes, Piglet singing about feet, Tigger singing about the nose, and Eeyore singing about the mouth. While all of these have been archived, there are rumours that there exists a 6th segment that featured Rabbit singing about hands, However, the existence of this 6th segment has never been confirmed, and it currently just remains a rumour. The show's original run ended in 1986, but reruns of it ran on the Disney Channel all the way through to 1997, and even though the show has never been released on home media in its entirety, 6 volumes of it were released on home video in the US, along with a few VHSs and DVDs that contained the educational specials. It's quite odd to me that this show was never released on home video or even on Disney+, especially given how important the Disney Channel is as a huge part of Disney's branding, with this show being one of only 4 launch shows for the network. Given how popular the Winnie the Pooh character is, I do think this one has a chance of seeing an official release at some point, most likely through being uploaded to Disney+. However, until this does happen, home recordings of reruns are most likely the only way we'll see more from this show that played a big role in helping to launch the Disney Channel over 40 years ago. Herbie the Lovebug. Herbie the Lovebug, or simply Herbie, is a character that has appeared across a multitude of media, including movies, TV shows, commercials, and at Disney parks. He is a sentient 1963 Volkswagen Beetle that has a mind of his own and is most recognisable from the red and blue stripes and number 53 that adorn the body of the car. My first exposure to the Herbie character was actually when I went to Disneyland in 2009, where Herbie made a small appearance in the Lights Motor Action Extreme Stunt Show, but I've never actually seen any of the shows or movies in which he appears. Not that that matters for this entry, as there is so little information on this particular piece of media that we don't even know when it was supposed to release or what exactly it even entailed. Developed sometime in either the 90s or the early 2000s, as stated it isn't known exactly when, Herbie the Lovebug was intended to be an animated show that was created by Modern Cartoons, the people responsible for the meme-worthy freak of computer animated nature, JJ the Jet Plane. Yeah, I'm sure we've all seen this picture somewhere or another. There is practically no information anywhere on the web about what this show was, or what was made from it, but we do know some sort of test pilot was made, as 3 screenshots, accompanied by the caption, "Pilot for a 3D CG television series production," existed on the website for Modern Cartoons that show us a few images of what this show could have looked like. One of the screenshots shows Herbie in outer space, flying above the moon with the Earth in the background. Another shows Herbie underwater, and the last one shows Herbie at some sort of gas station called Rusty's Rigs and Repairs. Based on these screenshots, we could see that Herbie would have had eyes and a mouth in the show, and I assume it was probably about Herbie going on various adventures across places like space, the ocean, or just to a local garage apparently. Although, honestly, these screenshots are so random and have no context behind them that you could tell me this show was about just about anything and I'd probably believe you. These images are the only proof of any kind that tell us this show existed, and as of 2025, there are no known cast members, crew members, or any footage of the pilot for this lost and cancelled show. The Modern Cartoons website that hosted the images isn't live anymore and can only be accessed via the Wayback Machine. When it comes to finding stuff like this, my guess would be that contacting employees who once worked at Modern Cartoons would be our best bet of finding out anything more that this pilot had to offer, as there's likely no chance that anyone owns a copy of it in their personal collection. Overall, this is by far one of the most obscure pieces of lost media that I've ever come across and covered on this channel, and I'd love to hear more about it from anyone out there watching if they have any other information to offer about this Herbie animated series that never saw the light of day. What's Stevie thinking? One of the things that Disney has always been adept at is finding almost any way to squeeze as much money as they can from their most successful shows, with one of their most popular and successful shows being the teen sitcom Lizzie McGuire. Debuting in 2001, the show follows middle school girl Lizzie McGuire as she navigates her teenage life and the issues that come associated with that. The show went on for 2 seasons and even got a movie in 2003, but was cancelled after the release of the film due to disagreements between Disney and the management team of the show's main star, Hilary Duff. But Disney being Disney, they couldn't let their golden goose go that easily, so they began exploring ideas for different ways that they could continue the Lizzie McGuire franchise without Hilary Duff involved. The idea that they landed on involved Miranda Sanchez, Lalane's character from the series, and centered on a new character named Stevie Sanchez, who would have been the younger sister of Miranda. Titled What's Stevie Thinking, this spin-off series would have focused on the Sanchez family moving to Australia to support wildlife conservation at a zoo, with Stevie sharing her inner thoughts through an animated persona, the same way Lizzie did in the original series. The series also would have been the debut of popular Disney Channel singer and actress Selena Gomez, long before she was the lead in The Wizards of Waverly Place, as she auditioned for and was cast in the role of Stevie for the series. A pilot for the show was filmed in 2005 to pitch it to Disney, however it wasn't picked up in favour of Hannah Montana, as that was pitched at the same time and there was only space for one new teen sitcom on Disney. The show would ultimately end up being cancelled, with the pilot being the only content from it that was ever created. As you've probably guessed based on the ongoing theme of this list, this pilot has never surfaced online in any way, and no footage from it exists anywhere on the web. We do have photos of the cast of the show, as well as a cast list and clips from Selena Gomez's audition tape that come from behind the scenes content, but nothing from the pilot itself has ever been made available to the public. Lalane even posted about the show on her online journal, and it was formally announced by Disney in a Variety article in 2004, so it's unknown if development of the show went beyond this pilot, although I'd imagine it didn't after the decision was made not to go ahead with the idea. Outside of a copy that presumably sits in Disney's vault, there are no known copies of this pilot out there, and I'm unsure if anyone ever attempted to contact the people involved with the pilot's production to try and get their hands on one. Interestingly, this isn't the only piece of lost or cancelled media associated with Lizzie McGuire, with a 2020 revival being planned at one point that ended up being cancelled, but perhaps we'll save that for a prospective part 2 of this video. Where the spin-off, What's Stevie Thinking, is concerned though, we would likely have to wait for someone with a copy of the pilot, or Disney themselves, to release it, as it is unlikely to leak online, as I'm doubtful any private collectors own a copy that they can release online for us all to enjoy. Disney's Snap. For this entry, I want to give a shout out to a viewer of the channel who emailed me some time ago suggesting this topic and providing me some information on it, as I'd never heard of this before, so shout out to you, Memory Ocean, for giving me what is essentially the only information available anywhere on this pretty damn obscure piece of lost media. So what exactly was Snap? Well, on April 6th, 2012, the Disney Channel aired a special episode of what looked to be a new reality TV show called Snap. The special was hosted by Doug Brochu and Brandon Michael Smith, who'd previously starred in Disney Channel shows Sunny with a Chance and So Random, with the episode also starring celebrity hypnotist Ricky Kalman. In the special, Kalman would hypnotise a parent into doing whatever their kids requested to settle family disputes in a fun and comedic way. There were cameras that were hidden to record the action, with Brochu and Smith watching what was going on in a separate room on a tablet. Each segment would be introduced by Brochu and Smith, explaining the background about the parent getting hypnotised in the episode through an interview with the kids of that parent, and they would both meet the participating family towards the end of the episode. The special was apparently announced via a press release on March 26, 2012, with a couple of promos airing regularly on the Disney Channel to advertise its release. Despite being referred to as a quote-unquote special, it was heavily implied that Snap was made with the intention of being a new show, but the single episode that did exist was only rerun 6 times throughout its premiere month, with the segments rumoured to have been swapped around on each different airing. Strangely, this oddity of a special was one of, if not the last time, that both Doug Brochu and Brandon Michael Smith would both appear in any Disney Channel original content, and since its final airing on the 26th of April 2012, the special has fallen into obscurity, with almost no mentions of any kind on the internet, and the only footage that can be found of this special are some promos and low-quality clips. Snap was apparently one of 3 failed attempts at a reality TV series on the Disney Channel in the late 2010s, the other 2 being Prank Stars in 2011 and Code 9 in 2012. Both of those shows also had short runs, with 6 to 7 episodes each, so it may just be that they were not as successful as Disney wanted, and they didn't want to continue with more episodes of Snap, so they opted to rebrand it as a special as opposed to a pilot episode. The Memory Ocean even told me that according to some work portfolios of verified Snap crew members on the Staff Me Up website, the special was labelled as a pilot, so who knows if this was actually made with the intention of going further, if the first quote-unquote special was successful. I couldn't find any other information or even mentions of this special outside of what was shared to me by the Memory Ocean, which I've shared here, and the special doesn't even have a page on the Lost Media wiki, making it a super obscure topic that's seemingly just vanished off the face of the earth. The only other mentions of it I found were an entry on the Disney Channel broadcast archives and one mention on Reddit, which didn't yield any new information. I do believe the information shared to me by the Memory Ocean is correct, as they made strides in helping to archive and find a lot of information on lost Disney content in the past, even sharing new info and content on topics I've covered in previous videos, such as the My Friends Tigger and Pooh pilot. At this point in the video, I'm inclined to turn to you all, as I never watched the special myself, or have any recollection of it airing. Do you guys ever remember giving this a watch or seeing it air back in the day? And if you did, what was it like? I'd love to hear from you all in the comments below. Whatever the case is with this special, I get the feeling it has likely been buried by Disney since it probably wasn't a success and they didn't pick it up for any more episodes, leading to it to just fade from most people's memories, making it quite the mystery.